Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I wanted to give folks an opportunity to get to know me better if you don't already know me. I wanted to be able to share a little bit about my work as a scholar activist or an activist scholar. And I wanted to be able to just answer any questions about the course that I recently launched entitled Asian America, an Introductory Course through my new online school for liberating education. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty casual. I have my desktop. I think people are sending me messages on Slack. I just got to, I think, turn off the notifications. But I will start off just, again, talking a little bit about my own work, my vision for the class, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you so much, folks who are joining. Again, I'm Dr. Robin Rodriguez. I'm here to talk about the newly launched course. I have a little bit more about me. If you hear some noise in the background, that's my little one. We got a busy family. Not anybody else can kind of be here right now to be with him, so he's going to kind of wander in and out. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So me, I have been teaching. I've been working at the university level for, yes, almost 2 decades, 20 years. And I've been focused as an educator, sorry for that. I've been focused as an educator and as a scholar on the Asian American experience, and even more specifically on the Filipino or the Filipinx experience. But I'm really going to talk about my work on the Asian American experience. I've also been a community organizer and advocate supporting racial justice for people of color, including Asian Americans, for even longer. So even though I've been teaching at the university level, I've been doing a much more work and for a longer period of time, really as a community organizer. So I have just launched this online course. It's the first of what I hope will be many of a new online platform, or what I'm calling the School for Liberating Education. And this first course is Asian America. It's an introductory course. And a bulk of the content is really drawing from the second edition of the book that I recently co-authored. I should get a copy. So this is the book that recently got republished. I co-authored this with Dr. Pavan Dhingra. It's called Asian America. And the course that I have launched draws a lot from the material in this book, but it also comes from my other publications. Now, the book itself really is a comprehensive review of a lot of the social scientific scholarship on Asian Americans. But in the course, I draw on a lot of the work we did here, but I also draw on my other publications on Asian American issues. I also draw from my observations and experiences as a community organizer and just as an Asian American woman. If you missed my talk, I actually talked about the community organizing that I'm doing right now in the Greater Sacramento region as part of the API Greater Sacramento Regional Network. It's soon going to be relaunched under a new name, but for now we call it the API Greater Sacramento Regional Network. I did a talk about my work with local community organizers that I work with in that space, Megan Sapigao and Goia Yang, and we talked about our work in the network last week. So if you missed it, you could go to API's Rise. It's the API's Rise Fund on Facebook. They have a Facebook page, and the Facebook Live should still be on there. They were the hosts of the event, so I talk a lot more about my advocacy work, at least locally here, although I do so many other things that I can't even begin to kind of talk about now, but that's a space that's really meaningful to me. So I've been teaching for a long time, I've been an organizer, but what's interesting is if you actually if I look at my teaching experience from a different lens, I've been teaching as a professor for almost 20 years, but I've actually been teaching Asian American studies and relatedly the topics of race, empire, and migration since I was in an undergrad. So I've actually been teaching since I was an undergrad, which is over half my life. Because I first took my course in Asian American Studies while I was an undergraduate at UC Santa Barbara. Gauchos, yay. I had transferred to UC Santa Barbara and I had the opportunity to take an Asian American Studies course there. And the course completely changed my life. I talk about it a lot, but I can't emphasize enough what it meant for me to take that class. When I took Asian American Studies, it was the first time I ever saw myself, not only in the figure of a faculty member, so my mentor, she's become now a collaborator, but Dr. Diane Fujino was teaching a course in Asian American Studies that I took. It was so meaningful for me to see an Asian American woman professor. And of course, what was really, really exciting was to be able to see myself reflected in the course material. And I think what I really valued about taking Asian American Studies is that it gave me this language. It gave me a language to really understand my experiences of my family, experiences of discrimination, racial microaggressions. It helped me to understand white supremacy and privilege and all the different ways that it manifests in everyday life. Because growing up, I'd have experiences and not really know how to name the things that were happening. Not fully. I didn't have the language. I knew, for example, I grew up in Union City, California. I remember when police would pick up on my friends when we were in middle school. Police were picking up my friends off the street, really kind of being really aggressive to young Filipino men because of this so-called gang problem, which I don't ever think was a gang problem. I think what it was is that you had young immigrant men who gravitated to each other, who needed each other because the school system didn't give them a place. And that was labeled gang activity. And they were often just mistreated by authorities. And I didn't quite have a language to make sense of why that was happening. I remember things happening in our church, things being said about the Filipino community. I remember it really distinctly. I must have been like 6 or 7 years old because, I must have been bored. I was in mass and I just remember kind of my knees were on the, anyway, I was sort of kneeling and I just remember hearing something being said by the parish priest about how Filipinos weren't active enough in the church. And I just remember feeling the tension in the air, my mom being really upset. That was just yet another experience. So many other experiences growing up. I remember my really good friend, a Chicana girl. We were walking to school, and I remember her telling me a story about how some elderly man had stopped her and pulled out his ring that had an American flag on it and told her, "This is my country, not yours." I remember all this stuff. I didn't understand it. And then I went to college, and then all of a sudden, all of these experiences made sense. I mean, I have so many more. I mean, I think a lot of you who share my experience, that growing up, these things happen. You don't really know what's going on. You don't really know how to name it. Or maybe for a lot of you kind of young folks in high school now, you're lucky you have social media, you have alternative ways of getting knowledge maybe, where you're finding opportunities to name things. For me, I didn't have those words, and Asian American Studies gave me those words. Again, explaining kind of white supremacy, how it happens in everyday life. It also explained why my parents had to be here. Like, why are we here anyway? We're Filipinos. We have a native land. We have a homeland. Even understanding the very reason why my parents had to leave. Actually, just a few days ago was the anniversary of my dad coming to the United States, September 20, 1972, almost 50 years ago. I remember my dad telling me all the time how he had just missed martial law in the Philippines. Martial law was declared on September 21st, yesterday. And My dad got here just the day before, and again, I didn't have any understanding of that history fully. I just knew that that was something that was significant for my dad, being able to escape the dictatorship. So what happened was I took the class. I took Asian American Studies for the very first time. It totally changed my life. And then after I took the course, I actually joined with other people in my class. We formed an organization. It was called Asian Sisters for Ideas in Action Now. Ideas in Action Now is really crucial because what we believed at the time, I still believe, that there's something so powerful about Asian American Studies, because it not only gives us this language, words, analysis, and an explanation of our experiences collectively, but more than that, is that it offers you tools. It offers you tools to transform the conditions of our lives. The very existence of Asian American Studies was the result of, students engaged in change. So after I took Asian American Studies, the quarter after I first took it, we formed this organization, and then I took on this role as a peer educator. And so we would organize forums. We would basically share things that maybe we had encountered in class, or if things were not being offered in our classes in Asian American Studies, we would offer it. I mean, I remember, Rest in Power, Haunani K. Trask. I remember that our organization shared The State of War, a film about the Hawaiian sovereignty movement that also featured Haunani K. Trask. I remember us even talking about Black political prisoners. We organized forums on Mumia Abu Jamal. There were so many things that we did because we knew that there was a power to Asian American Studies, a power to ethnic studies, that it doesn't just, again, give you these words to name and understand what we experience as people of color in this country, but we get these tools to understand how to transform the conditions of our lives. And I always wanted to be able to just keep sharing this. So I did it as a student. When I was a graduate student, I took on a job to teach Asian American Studies. When I got the opportunity to get a job in an Asian American Studies, I took it. But I also knew the limits. And I always thought, like, what a shame. What a shame that people have to go through the applications process, maybe get admitted into a UC or a CSU that happens to offer Asian American Studies or ethnic studies, maybe. Then maybe they have room in their schedule to take the class. But of course, when you're spending what now, $14,000 a year in tuition, that's just tuition, to go to UC, who has time? You might be a working student, you might have to major in a particular major because you feel like your economic opportunities or job prospects are better. So I just felt like something so vital for a person of color, right? Ethnic studies or Asian American Studies for Asian American people. And the fact that it is only available at these select institutions that you still have to apply to get into, and then pay all this money, and that you're never able maybe to take advantage of it. I'm really tired of the fact that we don't have it in our communities. A lot of people know I fight really hard. I fight really, really hard to ensure that Asian ethnic studies, or including Asian American Studies, is being taught in the K-12 system. I just came back last night. Was a first step towards moving our school district. We're in the Elk Grove Unified School District, getting them closer to ethnic studies. They they officially recognized Filipino American History Month for next month. But again, I'd always wanted to be able to extend Asian American Studies even more broadly. And I recognize that there's a limit to what can be done at the university. There's a limit to what I could do as a volunteer. I've been doing community organizing unpaid on a volunteer basis for a really long time. I've offered Asian American Studies knowledge that way. But, I've made some really bold decisions in the last year, and I've decided that I'm going to step away from my job in academia, and I just want a school for us. And I'm going to start with this online platform, this School for Liberating Education. I'm going to start with this Asian America course. It's a very short course because I also have the book that came out. I want to be able to share this knowledge, this work I put in to this book, but in a platform and in a way that people can understand, even if you never went to college. Even if you didn't go to college because the school system basically discouraged you from going to college, like a lot of working class Asian Americans. I know, because my husband, coming from a Hmong community, growing up poor, he was told time and time again, you are not college material. And he didn't get a chance to go to college right after graduating high school. He re-enrolled in college right now. He's in a class right now, which is also why I have a little one twirling around in my office chair here. But the reality is this knowledge isn't available to many people. And it ought to be, because it's just so empowering and so liberating. And of course, the fact that there's all of this rising anti-Asian hate during the pandemic, even more. And so I'm even more motivated to be able to offer something like this and more to our communities. So, I'm offering this class. You could get more information you can click on my website in the link tree in my IG bio. But again, ethnic studies, it's already hard to get because it's only at colleges and universities. Ethnic studies has been really, really hard to fight for because it's been because we face challenges by very organized right-wing white supremacists. They've made it their mission. They've made it their mission of late to ban what they call critical race theory, which is very connected to ethnic studies. Even those who might not even think of themselves as white supremacists and who might otherwise actually support diversity and inclusion in the history and social science curriculums of our schools, they do. They've been creating obstacles to expanding ethnic studies. Because what happens is they object to the way that those of us who are really committed to a kind of critical approach to ethnic studies, they don't want us to talk about and name white supremacy. They don't want us to talk about or name racial capitalism, imperialism, settler colonialism, other terms. These terms for them are frightening. And yet they are the terms that describe why we're here to begin with, right? What kind of lives we live. And, I'm not going to be able to do everything, like even address those really kind of heavy terms that many folks in our community don't even know. Because the course that I've just launched is just really a mini course. But I really, really hope as we expand to be able to give folks an opportunity to really understand those terms. Because the reality is, if you're a BIPOC or Black, Indigenous person of color, if you've been living in this society, y'all know what those words are because you live them. You live them every single day, and you may not have ever been given the chance to find the word to describe the thing we all know every single day. Every single day when we go to work, every single day when we go to school, every single day when we're cringing. Y'all probably just like me, you heard the former president talk about the Wuhan flu. You knew what that was going to do to us. You knew you were going to watch your back when you walked out the door. We know these terms because we live them, and yet we don't always, our school system doesn't want us. Or many of these people, are trying very hard to prevent us from being able to use these terms to analyze what we live every single day. And I want to be able to do that more as I expand the course offerings for my school for liberating education. A big thing that I want to do is, especially for Asian Americans, is really break down that model minority myth. Asian Americans, you know what I'm talking about. The model minority myth is that idea that we are all, those of us who look like this, we're successful, we all graduate from college, we make 6-figure salaries, we be ballin'. That is not true. And the myth is so dangerous in so many ways. Is it true that there are people like that? Yes, absolutely. But is it true universally? No. And even the reason why it's true for some is it requires some real understanding, because the reason why there are people who can, be a bling empire or whatever, I forget that Netflix show that I was watching, yes, guilty pleasure. But there are reasons for why people can live those ways. And it's really a consequence of the ways that the immigrant population, especially after 1965, was actively engineered in a particular way, and the ways that the model minority myth was actually being propagated very actively as a way to actually recruit us to be anti-Black. Again, stuff that is really deep and really hard to just talk about in an IG Live, but I'm gonna talk about that in this class because it's so important for us to understand the dangers of the model minority myth, not just because of the ways that it tries to recruit us as sort of honorary whites against Black people, but the ways in which that myth also masks and obscures the reality of our communities. We know, I certainly know, as a Filipina who has an extended family of Vietnamese and Hmong folk, we know that model minority myth does not always apply to us and is incredibly dangerous. So, this course is partly to break that myth down. So just a quick and dirty about the class, because I want to be able to have some time. So it is a short course. It's only, the content is only designed for about 10 hours, like something you could knock out in a weekend. When I designed the course, I was really thinking about people working in K through 12 education. I really want K through 12 educators to get access to this knowledge for so many reasons. One, of course, there is all this pushback against critical race theory. And I want folks who live in those states, and mind you, I think it's 13 states or is 18 states that have actively banned critical race theory, are basically trying to get us to not even talk about histories of slavery, native genocide, colonialism. This is happening. It's happening right now. I want to be able to have this course offered to those educators, because in those very same states where they're banning critical race theory is where our communities are growing. I want to be able to get it out to our community members so that they have this knowledge to empower themselves, to empower the children they serve, the parents and students they serve. The census numbers are telling us we are here and we are growing and we're not going anywhere. And there's a real need to understand what explains, why we're here, what are our kind of complex experiences. So I really had K through 12 teachers in mind. I was really thinking about those folks who have to suffer in these states where they're banning our histories and our knowledges. That was my viewpoint when I offered this class. I wanted it to be quick for teachers to be able to take in a weekend because they're already overtaxed. So, for me, the objectives for the class are pretty basic. I want teachers to come away with a critical understanding of the conditions and politics of Asian immigration and settlement in the U.S., with a focus on what's happening right now in the contemporary period. I want to provide broad knowledge on the diversity and complexity of Asian American life, including their struggles with and against inequalities. I want to highlight points of comparison and connection between Asian Americans and other communities of color in the U.S. So important. So, again, because I'm thinking about folks who work in K through 12 education, I've covered just a few topics. So I look at Asian immigration because you can't not look at it. You have to look at it historically, look at what it means now to be an Asian immigrant, to be potentially without status, to be here only with temporary legal status. I'll talk about identity, why and how we form our identities, and what it even means to live as Asian Americans and how we deal with anti-Asian hate and discrimination. Talk about Asian American families, what family looks like for us, educational achievement, really breaking that down, tearing it apart, because again, it's probably an educational achievement where there's this notion, and there are also Asian Americans who will even buy into it, like, yeah, we're all smarter. And I really want to break that down to see, is that really true? And also to look at how that model minority myth actually gets used against other communities of color. There could be ways that the model minority myth actually not only favors us in the classroom, and then actually it becomes a way of even justifying discipline for other students of color. Of course, the model minority myth also masks the fact that there are a lot of our folks who struggle in schools too. Talk about that. I'll also talk about our economic experiences. The thing that I love about my class is that I get to lift up all these opportunities for activism and advocacy. Sometimes teaching in the university, I had to be careful, because that's not what they want me to teach. They don't want me to teach people who I'm going to make into activists, although I did. I have tenure. But I want to be able to do that without restraint. I don't want to have to deal with grading people. I want people who could take this course because they want to be here. I don't want to have to give you obstacles to your learning. So I'm excited that I can be able to do this now. And, if the pandemic taught us anything, it taught us that we can use this tech to build our own institutions, for our own liberation. And that's super exciting for me. That's why I call it the School of Liberating Education, because I'm taking knowledge from that ivory tower, stuff that, is inaccessible to our communities, and putting it out there, and also using that online platform so that it can touch anybody and everybody out there. And also, that it will center advocacy, civic engagement, activism, because this is not the knowledge that's meant for you to just learn and sit with it. This is knowledge that's meant for you to change our worlds for the better, for ourselves, for our communities. So again, it's about 10 hours of content. It's a mix of things. I kind of curate some great videos. I add some readings that are accessible. I do some slideshow presentations, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. This is just the first pilot course. By January, I'm planning to launch even more. I'm just excited. I'm so excited that I can do this. We don't have a prohibitively expensive tuition. I don't plan it to be. The tuition, we're trying to create as many opportunities for the tuition to be reasonable for folks. Of course, the UC system, that's like $1,400 if you get in. But even, so our tuition is, of course, not meant to just build like a big profitable empire. I'm not about that. People who know me know what I'm about. That's about being able to at least pay for the basics of the platform, to pay staff livable wages. And at the end of the day, it's about also being able to create some surplus that we can redistribute back into the community. I'm so tired. I work with nonprofits. Y'all, for those of you who work in the nonprofit sector, we're constantly hustling for money to serve our communities. If there is a way that those of us who have the means, who could take a class like this, can invest in this class, and then we generate a surplus that I can then redistribute. That's the goal, because that's what we're trying to do here, is build autonomous institutions that really respond to our needs, because we have been at the mercy of institutions that were never built for us. And we can fight, and we can carve space, and we're successful. We've been able to do that. But at the end of the day, they don't belong to us. They were not built for us. They've accommodated us only when we fight and demand it. I want to put my energy now into building autonomous institutions from the ground up that are for us, by us. That is the goal here. I'm done. I'm done with the ivory tower. I am done with fighting institutions just so that they could give us crumbs that they will take away tomorrow at their pleasure and at their leisure. So, okay. Whew, I'm all sweaty. I just see like stuff like coming up in the thing. But thank you all for those of y'all who are here. I'm going to keep it open now. It's like I got half an hour if y'all want to stay. Because to look at questions, I have my intern. Hey, Jen. Jen will be fielding questions and then sending them over to me so I can answer. Oh, okay. Wow, questions. Where can people get the new book? You can get the new book from the website. So it's drrobinrodriguez.com. It's in the IG bio. It's in the link tree. What was the hardest part about writing your book? Yeah. For me, I think what's always been hard about writing, especially writing in academia, is that so much of the writing that we have to do is basically for other scholars. That is what we do. That's the job. And I think I never, and there's a value to that, don't get me wrong. For those of you who know my work, I've written a lot. And I know that writing has been really meaningful to the college students in particular who've had a chance to read the book. It just opened up so much for them, and I appreciate and value that. It's also why I did it. But also I recognize the limits of that these are very limited audiences. And so knowing the limits of the audience have been, I think, the hardest part for me, because I want to be able to write in a particular way. But when I have to deal with, the job, and that was the job is to be a scholar, to write scholarly work, or even demands on the part of the press itself. I think that's always been hard. How to write in a way that's as accessible as possible. So that's always been hard. I've always struggled with it. And it's also why I always did sort of other kind of work beyond the university, because I wanted the books. I'd always wanted the books to have a meaningfulness and a value to people who can never get on the college campus, or even who are on the college campus, right, as the workers cleaning up after us in the cafeterias, who don't ever get a chance to have these knowledges that actually are so valuable for them, probably more than anybody else. Favorite part about writing the book, this book was fun because it's sort of meant to be a textbook. And so to some extent it was fun because I knew I could be available to broader audiences, and pulling together resources that I know people may not kind of know on their own, and being able to kind of give some more life to the text by having references to, say, websites that people might or they might be able to dive deeper into an issue, or to connect them to community organizations. So these abstract ideas in the book feel real. Let's see, a favorite chapter. Oh, my favorite chapter always, because I'm an organizer, is the activism chapter. I think that's really, really a favorite for me. And I guess I could do a plug. I do have another book coming out, an anthology with my mentor, the very same woman who changed my world just by being her, at UC Santa Barbara. That's coming out in January on Asian American Activism. So that chapter is probably my favorite, the social movements and politics chapter. Can I give you a sneak peek of the book? I don't know, I guess. Here? I don't know. Okay, all things Rod. Oh, what's one thing you would tell aspiring educators? Well, depending on where you're going. If you're trying to get into higher ed, or very, very specifically the spaces I have occupied, which is these 4-year research universities, I'm going to tell you, frankly, if you're trying to be at a place like a UC Davis or UC Berkeley, any of the UCs, these 4-year research institutions, good luck. Good luck if you are encouraged to be a good educator, because that is not the purpose of those institutions. The purpose of those institutions is to produce research, and the faculty who are brought in are mainly brought in based on the strength of their research and They're only retained, they're only guaranteed job security if they have been producing research. Teaching is secondary. That is the big secret. All y'all who break your backs to get into UC system, you're paying all that money going into debt. If you think that the professors were trained and encouraged to be good teachers, I don't know if you can hear him, they were not. So in other words, if you are committed to teaching, just know that will not necessarily help you. I'm just being very, very honest. That is not my approach. I care about mentorship. I care about my teaching. Always try to improve it. Always try to craft relationships with my students. But that is not necessarily the value of research institutions like the UCs. So now, if you are an inspiring educator, and you still want to be in those spaces, it's just understand what you are up against. Try to find allies within that system that have the kinds of commitments you are, so you don't feel isolated and alone in your commitments to teaching. But the reality is the job at these institutions, at least the ones where I have worked, has never been about teaching. So I think that if you really care about teaching, there other trajectories in higher education might be better for you. That those, especially where maybe research is not the primary function, or that the university that you apply to is not a research university. My favorite moment in academia and education probably was when we launched the Bulusan Center in the fall of 2018. And that was my favorite moment because basically we took a mechanism that the UC system uses to basically kind of, solicit money from very rich people. So there's always a way, the UC system likes, it's not even UCs. Every institution has a fundraising arm, and they're always trying to look for money to come in from donors, alumni. If you graduated from college, you get harassed probably by the alumni office to give money. They like that. They like it if you have a lot of money and you have deep pockets and can, put that into the institution. And so what I love is that this platform, the mechanisms by which very rich people are able to put money in and name buildings and all that stuff, we used it differently. We basically got the community. They didn't have thousands and thousands, millions of dollars. Our folks might be giving $5, $20, but we got a lot of them. That's how we created the Bulusan Center. You think UC Davis has given us any money? Y'all don't know. There is no money coming from the UC Davis or UC system. It came from the community. And we fought for it, and that was what was so exciting for me. I love that. I love that we were able to kind of take this and like flip it and just do something else and create a very, very different culture, not just a new culture around community engaged research and education, but just a culture that of folks who come together with a deep love and commitment to the Filipino community. There's a lot of love there. I always talk about how in the Bulusan Center we lead with love. Our research is led by love, our love for our communities. Our education is rooted and we are led by love in that way. So that's my most my favorite moment in academia for me. Obviously, I think I have so many moments like seeing my students do well, seeing them fight all the odds that, so many institutional barriers. I have a student, who recently, just yesterday, hi Mark, if you're there, yup, hello Mark. Mark, struggled in undergrad. He's had ambitions to be a vet. He was struggling a bit for so many different reasons, very complicated reasons. He ended up being a major in Asian American Studies, and he's become now this advocate for even shifting veterinary science. And that's like a proud moment for me, where you take somebody who you would think would never like benefit from, say, Asian American studies, but then he took that, and then now he's trying to transform this field of veterinary science. He's asking so many hard questions about these institutions that train
so
vets
cool.
To really push them on their racial equity agendas, or lack thereof. Important moment in my work as a community organizer. Gosh, so many things. Okay, I'm going to jump to the course, because I feel like there's a whole bunch of questions y'all may have that are kind of about me, my journey, and which is okay, but I really want to talk about the class. So what will my course cover? So this particular course, again, is an introductory Asian America course. So this is really for those folks who never got the chance. That's my little one. For those who never got a chance to take Asian American Studies when they were in college. Again, really thinking about people who are working in K through 12 education, whether they're counselors or teachers. I'm really thinking about them. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it's a short course. This first course is a mini course. It's only about 10 hours of content. We're only covering 5 modules: immigration, identity, the family, educational achievement, and economic experiences. But that's just this one. I do plan, and Filipino American History Month starts soon. I'm launching some much longer course learning opportunities. I'll announce them in a few weeks for Filipino American History Month, but I'll be offering more learning opportunities in the Filipino American experience and kind of Filipino studies starting in 2022. And I'm hoping, depending on how much I'm able to do and how much our team is able to do, I really want to launch a series of courses connected to the next book I have, which I'm very proud of, on contemporary Asian American activism. I love that book. We brought all these powerhouse Asian American activists from different generations together. It's amazing. I really want, I feel like that book offers so many important lessons to those of us who want to change this world we live in, want to change the society we live in. We know there's something broken when we live in what we've been told is the most powerful nation in the world, the most democratic nation in the world, and yet, what? Our people are still dying. They still don't have access to vaccines. They didn't even have access to testing. So many disparities that we live with. So I really am excited about the Asian American activism courses I want to launch that are kind of anchored on that book. And I'm really hoping to do a course really that's inspired by my oldest son. Some of you know that I lost Amato in 2020. He was only 22. He was working alongside indigenous communities in the Philippines when he died. There is information out there about him, but I want to be able to organize a course.
Pretty soon you're gonna cry.
No, Mama's not gonna cry this time.
Good.
I know, but we, I really want to organize. Oh, I know. I want to offer a course that that highlights all of the different kinds of movements that he was part of. I think he's such an inspiration to young people. And of course, it's sort of anchored on his life, and the issues he fought for would be, I think, really exciting. All my courses, for the most part, right now are going to be online. There will be opportunities for both kind of a self-paced. So this course that I just launched, the Asian America course, it's kind of self-paced. So you take it as you can, when you can, no pressure. No judgment. Take it when you can. Take it, pay the tuition now. Take it like in April 2022. It's up to you. It's for you to have. But there is opportunities for kind of meeting virtually with other students and with me for that course. And I will always offer that in future courses. I would love to do in-person things if we can figure out how to swing it in a way that is mindful, that we still are in a pandemic, for one of the courses that I will be offering in 2022, when we launch kind of a menu or a series of Filipino studies courses. I really actually want to have a very small group that's specifically a course for Pinay working moms, people like me, to help kind of a course that offers Pinay moms who really care about their identities, are worried about raising their Filipinx children in this world, want to kind of touch up on some of the knowledges around our ancestors, not only in the Philippines, but also here, to even connect them to resources. Because and even to just create community for Pinay working moms who care about being Filipino, who struggle in working in predominantly white professional spaces, want to give them an opportunity to connect to our history, to connect with an understanding of the current issues, to connect with resources. I want to be able to curate something really tiny, like only 4 to 5 in person. I want to be able to do more of that. I mean, the long-term vision, y'all, is I want to get like lots of I have like this vision with some other folks. We're thinking about creating a space out in the Central Valley, a learning and healing space where people can really learn from the land, learn indigenous practices from the Philippines, learn the way Filipino migrants have been able to thrive on the land even as they struggled against farmers, to learn from indigenous communities here, so that we can be better caretakers of the land. I really feel like there's something important about working in the land, being connected to the land, and experiential learning. I feel like that's, at least, especially for Filipino Americans or Filipinos in America, I really envision, this opportunity for experiential learning, and in the Central Valley, and not just learning about the Filipino experience, but the experience of all the communities of color who are connected to the area. So I have those longer term visions. For this course, the short course, all the frequently asked questions are actually on my website. For the short course, it's $159, and that's for the kind of 10-hour course. That's also self-paced, so take it as you like. The opportunities for kind of connecting with other students or with me, that's a little bit more. And again, as I said, we're here. The school is a social enterprise that has the vision of investing any surplus back into our community organizations, nonprofit organizations, grassroots organizations. And frankly, the nonprofit I want to set up in my son Amato's name. I want to be able to just kind of have this autonomous ecosystem where the School for Liberating Education kind of is able to generate a surplus that we can redistribute back into the community through our nonprofit, through Amato Kaya. So, so many questions. Let's see, is of course. Okay, is it eligible for, there's no deadline. Sign up for the class. For the asynchronous course, there's really no deadline. You could kind of sign up as you like. If you want to participate in the group activities or the group sessions that include that I will facilitate, it's probably best that you apply before the end of October, because the first in-person session is like November 7th, I think. But that's also on my website. So drrobinrodriguez.com should have all that information. You can click the links there. But you should try to, for the synchronous sessions, so that you get a chance to meet with other students, or you can even meet with me. You want to try to sign up for that before the end of October. Otherwise, you could sign up as you like, when you can. Is the course eligible for high school or college credit? I don't know. You may be able to you might be able to get college credit. So there are ways that if you talk to academic advisors, I know this best for the college space for colleges and universities, you might be able to connect with your academic advisor for your major to see if this will count. I don't know what the process would be like for high school, so I can't really fully answer that question, but there might be opportunities. It's, I think, for instance, for college folks, I think it might be like similar to getting internship credit, right? So lots of times you can get internship credit if you're working somewhere else. I think you might be able to make an argument that this is kind of like an internship, right? Or just an opportunity for learning that isn't at your institution. That may well be something true for high school. Those who complete the course do get a certificate, so I think that's still something you could put on your resume or your CV if you find that will be helpful. I think it'll be helpful. I think it tells people that, hey, I have at least a basic understanding of kind of contemporary Asian American issues. The material for the classes will all be available starting October 1st. So by October 1st, you could pretty much log in and knock out the class in that weekend. So again, there's no real beginning date apart from when the material will be available. But, so if you sign up October 15th, you could take the class then. You sign up December, 26th after Christmas because you have Christmas money, I don't know, you could kind of start then and have finished the course before the new year if you're a student, on a winter break. But again, if you want the opportunity for meeting with other students, you want to try to sign up before October 31st, so that at least you get a chance to get caught up. So by the time you meet me in November, you can be prepared with any questions you may have. Materials, honestly, I mean, it's the investment is initially just the tuition. So all of the material you would possibly need is already going to be available online after you register. If you want to buy the book, if you can. I should just note, in case people think like I make all this money off like book sales, trust me, I've never made more than like enough money to buy a really fancy dinner, like less than $500. I mean, that's a lot, but it's also not a lot when you kind of think about like books that go on Oprah Book Club or whatever. That's a whole other like dynamic. But we don't get a whole lot in terms of royalties in academic books. And anyhow, at least for this book, any royalties will go towards the nonprofit I set up in Amado's name. The book was actually dedicated to Amado when it first was written, and I decided to go that way again. So you can buy the book. If you can't afford the book now, you don't have to buy it now. And all the other material will be available online once you register. And yes, anyone can join the course. I have registrants already from Canada. So wherever you are in the world, as long as you can speak and understand English, or mainly not even speak English, just understand English. If you could read and write English, mainly even just read English, because there's no writing. You don't have to write for this class, but mainly read in English. You could take it wherever you are in the world. There is no barrier to that, apart from, of course, internet access. So obviously you need some access to kind of the internet, and then to be able to afford the tuition, which I think is pretty reasonable. And we try to create opportunities for people to pay in a way that's manageable for them. Again, the surplus that we may, if we generate it, I hope we generate it, will go back into the community. If you know me, I'm already doing this all the time. I've done countless lectures, presentations on what I talk about in my book, and I will continue to do that anyway. But in addition, anything that we generate from the course will be reinvested. So yeah, people can kind of take it wherever they may be, but the topic, of course, is about what it means to be Asian in America. Okay, 6 more minutes. I guess I could talk about other things, because I talked about the book, the course proper. So again, this is just the pilot course. I'm going to be announcing a whole opportunities for learning Filipino studies in a couple weeks. I'm excited about that. And following that set of courses that I offer, I will in 2022 start offering courses that are kind of anchored on the Asian American Activism book that I was able to co-edit with my mentor, Dr. Diane Fujino at UC Santa Barbara. Let's see. Other questions. How did I get started as a community organizer? Ooh, and that's a good question. I started as a community organizer probably when I was 15 years old. When I was a sophomore. I shared it earlier in the IG Live, but I really was troubled by the fact that there was policing of people I knew, young boys I grew up with in my community due to the gang problem in Union City. And not to say that there weren't actual gangs, but I also feel like the label of gang member was unfairly extended to people I grew up with and I knew were not bad people. They were just immigrants who had just come to the U.S. and they were like, they needed community. And I just remember writing a letter to the superintendent of schools and, talking about how angry I was, or just how, at the time I didn't have the words, right? But I said we needed more diversity in education. And I don't know why they did that, but the superintendent of schools ended up inviting the chief of police and some other people, and that's where I articulated this concern about policing and my concern about the lack of diversity in our education. And I kind of just kept going after that. That was the real beginning, was kind of asserting myself as a member of the community and using whatever voice I could to uplift the things I was seeing that were affecting people I care about. And it continued. So when I went into college, that's when I really started to get even more involved. At the time, there was this very, very, awful anti-immigrant proposition that was that had been put on the ballot called Proposition 187. Very, very, very awful. Would have had awful effects on the undocumented population. That was something that really just that I was really moved by, and so I did a lot of organizing around that, kind of mainly doing a lot of community education about how that was going to impact immigrant communities. So yeah, I've just kind of continued on that road since then. I mean, I've said this before if you've been watching some of the things that I've done, and thank you for those who consistently kind of pay attention to some of the things I put out there. But I organize where I land. Wherever I may be, I organize. Whether it's, I was a grad student, there's a critical mass of Filipino grad students at the time at UC Berkeley who all wanted to come together to use our knowledge, our skills to uplift the issues of the community. That became the Critical Filipina, Filipinx, Filipino Studies Collective, the CFSC. I did that. I even here, I moved to the greater Sacramento region, got plugged in, organized with other folks, and now we have the Asian American Liberation Network, that what will become that. We call it now the API Regional Network. So many, when I was teaching at Rutgers in New Jersey, I lived in New Jersey for a time. I organized in the immigrant rights coalitions there, organized around and against immigrant detention. And, sometimes it wasn't, I think a lot of people see me as connected to Filipino issues, but my life and my activism hasn't only been about that. It's always been about, marginalized communities. That's what moves me. So yeah, I've been doing it pretty consistently ever since. Okay, we only have one more minute. If you weren't doing what you do right now, what would you do? I don't know. I would like to, I don't know. We'll have to talk about that another time. Filipino American History Month, yay, it's coming. It's so important to me. being Filipino is so much who I think of myself as a Pinay first. Even the term Asian American or feeling Asian American didn't actually come till much later, when I started to understand these interconnected histories and experiences of different Asian ethnic groups. So I've always been, unapologetically Pinay. Ruben Rodriguez, my late dad, love him and miss him so much, always said, "You're Filipino first. You can't wash the brown from your skin." And I've always held on to that. And so my Filipino-ness is I'm fiercely proud to be Filipino. I love being Filipino. But it's not the only thing about me. I feel really deeply connected to other communities of color. Have always had friends. My family is not just Filipino. I have a deep love and connection for other all kinds of folk who I can find kind of kinship with. Anyway, it's already 7, so thank you. I see people who join. Hi, hello. Mwah! I love this work. I really thank you for joining me in this journey. I don't know where it's gonna take me. I'm kind of like going blind in the dark. This is a completely new thing. I don't know where the models for this is. Because I don't know. I don't know where they are. I'm just gonna do this because my heart tells me this is it, and I'm leaning into the ancestors. Leaning into faith in something greater, that there's something greater. That's all I'm doing, and just kind of moving in that direction. So thank you, everybody. See you next time. Bye.